In the world of business management, it feels like you're swimming in this alphabet soup of acronyms, right? You've got BPR, TQM, Six Sigma, BPM, and it can get confusing really, really fast. You start to wonder, are they all just different ways of saying the same thing? Well, not at all. Today, we're going to clear up all that confusion and figure out what these powerful ideas really mean, and we're going to start with the most radical one of them all, business process reengineering.
All right, let's just dive right in with a quote that's about as dramatic as it gets. Do not merely automate, obliterate. Now, that was the battle cry of Michael Hammer, one of the masterminds behind BPR. He wasn't talking about just using computers to do the same old broken things a little bit faster. No way. He was talking about something way more revolutionary, completely blowing up the work itself and starting over. And that really brings us to our first big idea here. Because BPR is not about making little tweaks. It's not about polishing what you already have. It's about taking a totally blank sheet of paper, a clean slate, and asking a very dangerous question. If we were building this company from scratch today, how would we really do this? So, the whole secret is right here in the official definition. I mean, just look at those words, fundamental rethinking and radical redesign. BPR is meant to challenge absolutely everything. It forces you to question your oldest, most sacred assumptions and just toss out the processes that don't make sense anymore. And you do it all for one reason: dramatic improvements. We're not talking small wins here. We're talking game-changing results.
In this image, this just illustrates that shift in thinking perfectly. The old way is like a relay race, you know? One department does their little bit, hands it off to the next, who hands it off to the next. It's slow. BPR looks at that and just says, forget the relay race. It organizes all the work around the one thing that matters, the final outcome for the customer. It often means you combine a bunch of steps and give one team the power to see a project through from the very beginning to the very end.
So how does this whole revolution actually happen? Well, it pretty much boils down to these 3 R's. First, you rethink. You question everything from the ground up. Then, you redesign the process to meet those new goals, which usually means tearing down the walls between departments. And finally, you retool. You bring in technology, not just to speed things up, but to make this whole new way of working even possible.
Okay, so let's get into our first big comparison. How does this radical, kind of explosive approach stack up against a totally different philosophy? You know, the slow and steady march of continuous improvement, which is best represented by something called total quality management, or TQM.
To make this super clear, let's use an analogy. I want you to picture your business as a car. Total quality management, TQM, is the philosophy of being the absolute best mechanic in the world. It's all about meticulously tuning the engine, rotating the tires, polishing every last bit of chrome, doing everything you can to make that existing car run as perfectly as possible.
But BPR looks at that perfectly tuned car and says, roads are obsolete. We need to build a hovercraft. The difference is just massive, right? BPR is a high-risk, high-reward, one-shot project that's aiming for a huge breakthrough. TQM, on the other hand, is a low-risk, ongoing commitment from everyone to just make the system you already have a little bit better every single day.
And here's the formal definition to prove it. The key phrases you need to remember for TQM are continuously improving and involvement of everyone. It's really about building a culture where every single person is always on the lookout for small ways to improve their little piece of the puzzle.
Okay, so we've got revolution versus evolution. But what happens when BPR's big idea, start-from-scratch mentality, bumps up against the world of intense, data-driven precision? Well, this is where Six Sigma makes its entrance.
Let's go back to our vehicle analogy for a second. If TQM is the daily maintenance that keeps the car running smoothly, Six Sigma is the specialized race engineer who shows up with a laptop full of diagnostic data. They are not trying to redesign the car from scratch. Nope. They are laser-focused on analyzing every bit of performance data to find and eliminate the tiny little defects that are robbing the engine of its full power.
And that is exactly what Six Sigma is. It's a super disciplined statistical method. It uses this really rigorous 5-step process. You might have heard of it. It's called DMAIC. Define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. Its entire purpose is to hunt down the sources of tiny errors in an existing process and just systematically wipe them out. This table really lays it all out. You see, BPR is broad, it's strategic, it's driven by a big vision from the top to totally transform how the business works.
Six Sigma, on the other hand, is narrow and tactical. It's driven by data from the bottom up to perfect one specific part of a process that already exists. One is all about a total redesign, the other is all about refinement. So after all this, you're probably asking, okay, so which one is the best? And the real answer is, that's kind of the wrong question. It's not about which tool is best, it's about which tool is right for the job you have in front of you. So let's take a look inside the modern manager's toolbox. Here's a good way to think about it. BPR is your sledgehammer. You use it for a complete demolition and rebuild when the whole foundation is cracked. TQM is the culture of daily maintenance, the care that keeps everything running like a top. Six Sigma, that's the high-tech diagnostic computer you plug in to solve a very specific, measurable problem. And then there's BPM, Business Process Management. Think of BPM as the master blueprint for the whole garage. It's the system that helps you manage everything, deciding when to use the sledgehammer and when to use the diagnostic tool, making sure it all works together. And that brings us to maybe the most important question of all. How do you know which tool to pull out of that box? How do you actually know if you need a simple tune-up, a deep diagnostic, or a complete overhaul?
And why this matters is simple. The stakes are really high. Choosing the wrong tool can be an absolute disaster. If you're dealing with minor issues, a culture of TQM and continuous improvement is your answer. That's your regular engine tune-up. If you've got specific, measurable defects that are causing problems, you bring in Six Sigma to run the diagnostics and pinpoint the issue. But if your entire business is being left in the dust by the competition, if you are genuinely facing a crisis, that's when you need the radical, clean slate approach of BPR. A tune-up is not going to save a car that's just fundamentally obsolete.
And that's really the question we'll leave you with. As you look at the processes at your job or just in the world around you, ask yourself, do they just need a simple tune-up to make them a little better? Or has the world changed so much that it's finally time to stop tinkering with the old model and start designing a whole new vehicle? The answer to that question will tell you if you need an evolution or a revolution.